The galaxy had never known peace for long. Kingdoms rose and fell among the stars, and battles echoed from one world to the next. Among all the empires, the Veyran kingdom stood proud and feared. Their king, Valnir, ruled with iron will and sharp wisdom. His armies were vast, and his warriors were known for their strength. Yet even the strongest kingdom could not escape the storm of war. The humans, once limited to their small blue world, had grown stronger. They built ships that could fly farther, faster, and longer than before. With courage in their hearts, they challenged the alien powers of the galaxy. Some called them reckless, but others saw them as brave. The humans believed no ruler, no matter how powerful, had the right to claim the stars alone. When the Veyran kingdom and humanity clashed, the war shook countless planets. Skies burned with fire, oceans boiled with falling ships, and cities turned into ruins. On both sides, soldiers fell in numbers too great to count. Yet neither side yielded. The humans fought for survival. The Veyrans fought for pride and for their king. In the heart of the storm was Princess Lyra, the only daughter of King Valnir. She was young but already respected among her people. Her spirit was strong, and her eyes carried both kindness and fire. Unlike many of her father's commanders, she questioned the endless war. She saw the cost in every cry of her people, in every broken home left behind after battles. Still, she stood by her father, for she loved him and believed loyalty was her duty. When the Battle of North Prime began, it was meant to be a show of strength for the Veyrans. Their fleet arrived in full force, led by the king himself. Human defenders stood against them with courage, though their numbers were fewer. The clash lit the skies with thunder. Ships tore through one another. Energy beams carved across the darkness of space. The ground below trembled under the weight of falling giants. Princess Lyra commanded a small division during that battle. Her ship was swift, her crew loyal, and her orders clear. Yet war is never predictable. In the chaos, her vessel was struck. Explosions tore through its hull. Flames spread, systems failed, and alarms filled the air. She refused to abandon her post until every crew member was safe. By the time she reached the escape pods, only one remained. As the fire spread behind her, Lyra made her choice. She sealed her crew inside the pod and sent them away, though it meant she would stay behind. But fate had its own plan. Before she could find another way out, a second explosion ripped through the ship. The shock threw her into darkness, and the last thing she remembered was the sight of stars blinking above shattered metal. Back on the Veyran flagship, King Valnir fought fiercely. His commands were sharp, his resolve unshaken. But when news reached him that his daughter's ship was lost, his heart froze. Reports said no signals were found. Wreckage scattered across the battlefield told a grim story. Many believed the princess had perished. The king did not cry before his people, for he was their strength. Yet within his private chamber, his soul carried a wound deeper than any blade could make. He loved his daughter more than any crown or throne. She had been his light, a reminder of his late queen, and the one voice that could soften his iron heart. Now that light was gone, taken by war. The people of Veyra mourned with him. Across their worlds, fires were lit in her memory. Statues of the princess stood draped with flowers. Songs of sorrow filled the night skies. Soldiers swore vengeance, their eyes burning with fury. To them, the humans had not only attacked their kingdom but stolen their princess. The war, already fierce, turned even more brutal. Among the humans, rumors spread quickly as well. Some claimed they had captured a royal heir, though no proof was shown. Others said the Varans themselves had abandoned her. The truth was hidden, lost in the ashes of battle. For both sides, the tale of the missing princess became a shadow that shaped their choices. King Valnir grew harsher after her loss. His armies marched with little mercy. Worlds that resisted were struck down without hesitation. He told himself this was the only path forward, the only way to honor his daughter's memory. But deep in his heart, he was a father grieving. Each night he looked to the stars, wondering if fate had been cruel enough to take her completely, or if perhaps some hidden spark of life still remained. The princess was gone, yet her memory lived on. Her name was whispered in the halls of the palace, carried in the prayers of her people, and burned in the rage of her father. To the galaxy, it seemed the war had claimed another innocent soul. But destiny had not finished with Lyra. Though the king and his people believed her lost, her story was far from over. For on a distant, broken world, far from her father's reach, Princess Lyra still breathed. Her body was weak, her ship destroyed, but her spirit endured. And in the ruins of war, her path was about to cross with someone who would change not only her fate, but the fate of the entire galaxy. The war left scars on every world it touched. Cities once filled with life were reduced to broken ruins, silent except for the whisper of wind. One such world was Erelon, a place where forests once stretched wide and rivers ran clear. Now, black smoke rose from craters, and wreckage from ships lay scattered across the land. The sky was gray, heavy with the memory of battle. On this shattered world, a lone human soldier named Daniel moved carefully through the ruins. He had been separated from his unit after a violent clash. His communicator was broken, his supplies low, but his will was strong. Daniel was not a man who gave up easily. He had seen too much to believe in quick endings. Where others saw only despair, he searched for survival. Daniel's boots crunched on broken stone as he scanned the wreckage around him. His rifle hung across his back, though he carried it more for protection than for use. He had no desire to fire again unless he had no other choice. The war had already taken enough lives. As he passed the remains of a Varan fighter craft, he heard something faint. At first, it was so soft he thought it was only the wind. But then it came again, a weak sound, almost like a cry. Daniel froze and listened. His instincts told him to be cautious, for many times traps had been laid among ruins. But this sound was not sharp or threatening. It was fragile, as if it came from someone clinging to life. He followed the sound through twisted metal and burning fragments until he found the source. Beneath the wreck of a shattered pod lay a figure. Her armor was scorched, her body bruised, and her breathing shallow. She was not human. Her skin bore the pale markings of the Varans, and her eyes were closed in pain. Daniel's chest tightened. This was no ordinary soldier. From the markings and the royal crest upon her broken armor, he realized who she must be. It was Princess Lyra, heir of the alien kingdom, the very one the humans believed had perished in battle. Daniel knelt beside her, his mind racing. Every instinct of war told him to leave her. She was the daughter of his enemy, the bloodline of the very king who swore destruction upon humanity. If he left her there, his duty would be fulfilled without lifting a hand. But Daniel was not a man who followed hatred blindly. He looked at her wounds, at the way her hand trembled as she struggled for breath, and he felt something deeper than orders. She was alive, but barely. Without help, she would not survive the night. Daniel's choice was clear, though it carried great risk. He tore a strip from his own uniform to bind her wounds. He lifted her carefully, though the weight of her armor made it difficult. Her head fell weakly against his shoulder, and he could feel her faint pulse. For hours, he carried her across the ruins until he found a broken shelter, half buried in the ground. It was enough to shield them from the cold winds and the ash that filled the air. There he laid her down and began his work. With what little supplies he had, he cleaned her wounds, set bandages, and gave her sips of water from his canteen. When night fell, Daniel sat near her, rifle close at hand. He studied her face as the dim light flickered. Even in weakness, she carried a strange strength. She was young, yet her presence spoke of responsibility beyond her years. He wondered what burdens she carried as the daughter of a king. He wondered if she had ever wished, like him, for an end to endless fighting. The princess stirred once in her sleep, whispering words in her own language. Daniel could not understand them, but the tone was soft, filled with longing. He guessed she was calling out for her father, or perhaps for her people. He turned his eyes upward, to the dark sky filled with broken ships. Two great powers fought endlessly above, but here on the ground, he had chosen another path. He had chosen life. Morning came slowly, with weak light seeping through the clouds. Princess Lyra's eyes opened for the first time. They were sharp, glowing faintly with the mark of her kind. At once, fear flashed in her gaze as she saw Daniel beside her. She tried to rise, but her strength failed. Pain shot through her body, and she sank back with a gasp. Daniel raised his hands in peace. His voice was calm and steady. "I am not here to harm you. You were wounded. I only want to help." She did not answer at first. Her people had taught her that humans were ruthless, that they sought only to conquer and destroy. Yet the man before her did not strike. He did not sneer with hatred. His eyes held only honesty. She studied him in silence, as if searching for hidden intent. Daniel offered her water. Slowly, she accepted, though her hand trembled as she lifted the cup. The taste of water on her lips brought strength, and her breathing steadied. For days that followed, Daniel remained by her side. He hunted small creatures for food, found clean water among the ruins, and kept watch through the night. Each time she awoke, he greeted her with quiet words. At first, she resisted, her pride unwilling to show weakness before a human. But as her wounds healed and her strength returned, she began to see him differently. He did not treat her as an enemy. He did not demand anything in return for his care. He risked his safety, even his life, to protect her. Slowly, the wall between them began to break. One evening, as the fire crackled softly, she spoke in broken human tongue. "Why help me? I am your enemy." Daniel looked at her, his expression steady. "You are not my enemy. You are alive. That is enough." His words lingered in her heart long after the fire went out. For the first time since the war began, Princess Lyra felt something she had not known in years. She felt trust. The days passed slowly on the broken world of Irulan. The land remained scarred by war, yet in the middle of ruins, life still clung to survival. Daniel and Princess Lyra found shelter in the half-buried remains of an old station. Its walls were cracked, its roof partly fallen, but it kept out the cold wind and gave them a place to rest. At first, their silence was heavy. Daniel worked without many words, gathering food, fixing small tools, and keeping watch for dangers. Lyra, though still weak, studied him with sharp eyes. She had been raised to see humans as reckless invaders. Her father's commanders spoke of them as wild creatures with no honor. Yet this human soldier moved with patience and calm strength. He shared his food, he offered her water, and he never once looked at her with hatred. As her strength grew, she began to speak more. Her words came slowly, for human language was not easy for her. Still, Daniel listened carefully. He answered with simple phrases, pointing to things around them to help her learn. A broken lamp became light. A torn blanket became cover. Her name spoken by him sounded different, softer, and for reasons she could not explain, she did not mind it. One evening, while they sat near a small fire, Lyra asked him, "Why fight? Why humans come to stars?" Daniel thought for a long moment. His gaze lifted to the sky, where faint lights of distant ships still moved. "We fight because we are afraid. Afraid to be ruled. Afraid to be forgotten. Humans want freedom, even if the cost is heavy." Lyra lowered her eyes. She remembered her father's words, how he claimed the Varans were protectors of the stars. But in her heart, she knew not all of it was true. "Your freedom bring war," she said softly. Daniel looked at her, his face calm but firm. "And your kingdom's pride brings war too." Their eyes met across the fire. For the first time, there was no anger in their exchange. There was understanding. Both had grown up hearing one story, but now they were learning another. The following days tested them further. Supplies grew thin, and storms swept across the land. Ash and rain fell together, turning the ground into heavy mud. Daniel built traps to catch small animals, while Lyra used her knowledge of plants to find roots and herbs safe to eat. Working together, they managed to survive. One night, while Daniel was away searching, a group of scavengers appeared. They were neither human nor Varan, but outcasts who lived by taking from others. They found the shelter and tried to force their way in. Lyra, still weak but growing stronger, stood to defend herself. She picked up a piece of broken metal and held it as a blade. Her voice was steady, though fear moved in her chest. The scavengers laughed at first, but then Daniel returned. His rifle was ready, and his voice carried strength. He ordered them to leave. Something in his stance, in the way he stood protectively near Lyra, made the scavengers hesitate. They saw no fear in him. After a tense moment, they withdrew into the shadows. When the danger passed, Lyra looked at him differently. She had expected him to save himself first, to think of his own life. But he had come straight to her side, ready to fight for her. She whispered in her own tongue, words he could not understand, but they carried gratitude. As time went on, their bond grew. She began to teach him her language, small words each day. He repeated them with effort, sometimes with mistakes that made her smile. He showed her how to use human tools, simple devices from his pack, and she watched with keen interest. One afternoon, as they walked through the ruins searching for supplies, Lyra paused before a broken mirror. The reflection showed her armor, cracked and scarred, the royal crest barely visible. She touched it with a heavy heart. "My people think I am gone," she said quietly. Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder. "Then one day we will show them you are not." His words carried weight, not as a promise but as a belief. In that moment, Lyra felt a warmth she had not known in the cold years of war. This human did not see her as a princess to be used, nor as an enemy to be destroyed. He saw her as someone worth saving, someone who mattered beyond titles and crowns. At night, when the stars shone through the clouds, they often sat together in silence. Lyra would point out constellations known to her people, telling small stories of warriors, healers, and travelers of the past. Daniel listened, sharing tales of earth in return, oceans that stretched without end, mountains covered with snow, cities filled with lights. Through these stories, they found a strange peace, a place where war did not exist. It was as if the ruins around them faded, leaving only two souls learning to trust each other. Yet deep within, both knew this peace could not last forever. The war outside had not ended. Armies still marched, ships still fought, and rulers still gave orders from afar. One day, they would have to leave the shadows and face the world again. But for now, within the shelter of ruins, a bond was being forged. A bond stronger than fear, stronger than hate, and stronger than the walls built by war. Daniel had saved her life. Lyra had given him trust. And together, in the quiet of Ireland, they began to build something far greater than survival. They began to build hope. The weeks on Ireland changed both Daniel and Princess Lyra. They had begun as enemies by fate, yet now they walked as companions. Their trust grew each day, and with it, a quiet strength. But both of them knew the ruins could not hold them forever. Lyra was not meant to remain hidden, and Daniel could not abandon his people forever. The time was coming when they would have to step back into the fire of the galaxy. It was Daniel who first noticed the signals in the sky. One evening, as the two gathered wood near the broken station, he saw faint lights flashing above the clouds. They were not stars. They were signals, coded beams, searching for survivors. Ships moved across the heavens again, and this time they were Veyran. Lyra's heart leapt. She knew the pattern of those signals. They belonged to the royal fleet, the very ships her father commanded. For the first time since the battle that had nearly taken her life, hope burned in her chest. She was not lost forever. She could return to her people. Yet the thought was not simple. She turned her eyes toward Daniel. The human stood silent, watching the lights as well. He knew what they meant. If the Veyrans found her, she would be taken back to her kingdom. And him? He would be seen as the enemy who had dared to stand at her side. That night, Lyra spoke in a quiet voice. If I return, they will not welcome you. They will call you foe. My father will not trust you. Daniel met her gaze. His eyes were calm, though his heart was heavy. I know. But you must return. Your people believe you are gone. They fight harder because they think you are lost. If they see you alive, maybe things will change. Lyra felt torn. She wanted to see her father again, to show her people she had survived. Yet she could not bear the thought of leaving Daniel behind, after all he had done for her. She clenched her hands and said, I will not go without you. Daniel shook his head. You belong to your kingdom. I am only a soldier. But Lyra stood firm. You are more than soldier. You are my friend. You saved me. You walk with me. If I return, you return with me. Her words carried such strength that Daniel could not argue. He knew she meant them, not as duty, but as truth. In her heart, she had already chosen. 2 days later, the Veyran scouts landed on Ireland. Their search teams swept across the ruins, looking for remains of the lost princess. When they finally found her, alive and standing tall with a human at her side, shock spread through the ranks. The Veyran soldiers fell to their knees, bowing to their heir. Tears filled their eyes, for they had believed she was gone forever. But as they rose, their expressions turned hard when they looked at Daniel. Their hands gripped weapons, and their voices rose with suspicion. Lyra stepped forward, lifting her hand. Her voice rang clear and strong. He is not enemy. He is protector. He saved me when all was lost. None shall harm him while I live. The soldiers hesitated, for no one could defy the word of the princess. They lowered their weapons, though distrust remained in their eyes. Word was sent to the flagship at once. When the royal cruiser arrived, the entire army gathered. The great ship descended like a dark star, its banners shining across the sky. The moment Lyra stepped onto its deck, the crowd roared with joy. Cries of her name echoed through the halls. For them, it was a miracle. Their lost princess had returned. But the joy of the people was not shared by their king. Valnir stood tall upon his throne, his armor gleaming, his crown heavy with command. When his eyes fell upon Lyra, they softened for a heartbeat. She was alive. His daughter, thought dead, had returned to him. His heart, long buried in grief, nearly broke with relief. Yet then he saw Daniel walking behind her. A human soldier, standing close, as if he had earned the right. Valnir's face hardened, his joy turning to fire. He rose, his voice thunderous. "What is this, my daughter? You return not alone, but with the blood of our enemy beside you." The hall fell silent. Every commander, every soldier, every servant froze, waiting for her answer. Lyra did not flinch. She stepped forward, her voice steady. "Father, this human saved my life. When I lay broken and near death, it was he who gave me water, food, and strength. Without him, I would not stand here before you." Valnir's eyes blazed with anger. "He is the enemy. Their kind brings fire to our stars. Their kind spills the blood of our people. And you would dare bring him before me as protector?" Lyra's chin lifted. She met her father's gaze with courage. "Yes. Because he is more than enemy. He is proof that not all humans are what we have been told. If I live, it is because of him. If I stand, it is because of him. He is not foe. He is friend." The court whispered in shock. Never before had the princess spoken so boldly against her father. Never before had she defended a human before the throne of Vera. Valnir's heart was torn. He had dreamed of this day, of seeing his daughter alive again. Yet the sight of her hand resting near a human filled him with rage and fear. He loved her deeply, but he feared she had been poisoned by weakness. His voice roared once more. "This cannot be. You are heir to Vera. You cannot stand beside him." But Lyra stood firm. "I can. I will. For war has taken enough from us. And if you cannot see that, then it is not me who is blind, but you." The hall gasped. The king's hands clenched, his pride wounded. Yet behind his anger, his heart trembled. For the first time, he saw his daughter not as a child, but as a woman with her own strength. The return of the princess had shaken the kingdom. Joy had turned to conflict. Hope had turned to fear. And in the center of it all, one human soldier stood beside her, silent but unyielding. The galaxy would soon know that the lost princess was not only alive. She had returned with a human at her side. The throne hall of Vera was filled with voices. Soldiers whispered among themselves, nobles argued in hushed tones, and servants moved nervously along the walls. The return of Princess Lyra had shaken the entire kingdom. They had mourned her as dead, and now she stood alive before them, stronger than before, yet standing with a human soldier at her side. To many, it was a miracle. To others, it was a question that demanded answers. At the center of it all, King Valner sat upon his throne, his eyes burning with storm and fire. His heart wanted to rush to his daughter, to hold her and never let her go. Yet his pride as king chained him in anger. He could not look past the figure of Daniel standing near her. Every time he looked at the human, he saw the faces of his fallen soldiers, the ashes of burned cities, the sorrow of his people. Valner rose to his full height, his voice booming through the hall. You return to me, my daughter, but you bring with you a shadow of our enemy. Do you not see what this means? Do you not see what danger you place upon our throne? Lyra did not tremble. She met her father's gaze with steady eyes. I see only truth. I see the man who carried me from death. I see the one who gave me hope when the galaxy turned dark. Without him, Father, you would not see me standing before you today. Her words stirred the hall. Some of the nobles shifted uneasily, unsure whether to support their king or their princess. The soldiers looked at one another, many torn between loyalty to their ruler and admiration for their heir. Daniel stood silently, saying nothing, but he felt the weight of every eye upon him. He knew this moment was dangerous. One wrong move, one wrong word, and he could be cut down where he stood. Yet he also knew that Lyra had placed her trust in him, and he would not betray that. The king's fury grew hotter. Do you not understand? They are the reason our sons and daughters bleed across the stars. They are the reason your ship was destroyed. And now you bring one into my court, demanding I accept him. Lyra's voice rose, clear and firm. I do not demand. I ask that you see with more than anger. This war has blinded us all. He is proof that not all humans are what you believe. If one enemy can show mercy, then perhaps there can be more. Perhaps the war does not have to last forever. The hall fell silent again. Valner's fists tightened on the arms of his throne. He could not bear her words. To him, peace was weakness, and weakness had no place in the kingdom of Vera. His heart cried out with love for his daughter, but his pride screamed louder. He turned his gaze upon Daniel, his voice sharp like a blade. Human, speak. Why do you stand beside my daughter? Why did you not strike her down when you had the chance? Was it mercy, or was it some hidden trick? Daniel lifted his head. His voice was calm, steady, without fear. I did not save her because of politics or tricks. I saved her because it was right. I saw a life in danger, and I could not turn away. It did not matter if she was alien or human. Life is life. The words echoed through the hall. Some of the younger soldiers lowered their eyes, struck by his honesty. The nobles murmured again, their voices unsure. Valner, however, felt his rage twist deeper. You speak of life, the king growled, while your kind takes it from us without pause. Do you think your words can erase the rivers of blood? Do you think your mercy outweighs the cries of the fallen? Daniel did not lower his gaze. No words can erase the dead. I know this. I have buried friends, just as you have buried your people. But if we continue as we are, there will only be more graves. Your daughter understands this. That is why she stands with me. Valner's fury burst forth. Enough. Guards, take him. At once, armored soldiers stepped forward. Their boots struck the floor with heavy sound, their weapons raised toward Daniel. Lyra's eyes widened, and she rushed to stand in front of him. Her voice rang like a blade drawn from its sheath. No. You will not touch him. The guards froze, uncertain. To move against the princess was unthinkable. Valner's face darkened, torn between his command and his daughter's defiance. He had expected her to yield, to bow to his will as she always had before. Instead, she stood taller than ever, shielding the human with her own body. "Father," she said firmly, "if you cannot honor the man who saved me, then you cannot claim to honor me. For we are bound now, by trust and by truth. If you cast him aside, you cast aside me as well." The hall erupted in whispers. The king's fury shook the very air. Yet beneath the storm of his pride, his heart faltered. He looked at his daughter, his only child, the last piece of his queen. She had always been his light. Now that light shone brighter than ever, but it no longer followed his path. It had found its own. Valnir sank back into his throne, his jaw tight. His voice was low but heavy with fire. "Then let him be judged. If he is as noble as you claim, he will prove it. Let the trial decide." The hall stirred with shock. The trial of honor was a sacred test in Veyran culture, a way to measure truth and courage. Few survived it, and none had ever been given to a human. Lyra's heart pounded. She knew the danger, but she also knew Daniel's spirit. He would not falter. Daniel nodded once. His eyes met the king's. "I accept." Valnir's fury did not fade, but his heart was not blind. He had seen something in the human's eyes, something that unsettled him. It was not weakness. It was not trickery. It was something far more dangerous to his pride: honor. The fate of Daniel now rested in the trial of honor. The king's fury had not been calmed, but it had been challenged. The galaxy watched as one human stood before the might of an alien throne, not as conqueror, not as slave, but as equal. The decision spread through the kingdom like fire. The human who stood beside the princess would face the trial of honor. Some whispered that he would not survive. Others believed it was nothing more than a cruel punishment ordered by the king. Yet there were those, quiet but hopeful, who wondered if perhaps the human would show something none had ever seen before. Daniel was taken to the Hall of Trials, a vast chamber carved from dark stone. Its walls bore the marks of past champions, those who had proven themselves worthy before the eyes of Veyra. At the far end stood King Valnir, his crown gleaming, his expression cold. Beside him, Princess Lyra stood with her head held high. Her hands were clenched, but her eyes never wavered from Daniel. The trial was not a battle of strength alone. It was a test of courage, wisdom, and spirit. The Veyrans believed that honor was not just won by the sword but by the heart. Daniel knew none of their traditions, but he walked forward without fear. His steps were steady, his back straight, his gaze firm. The first test was the path of fire. A long bridge stretched across a pit of flame. The air shimmered with heat, and the stones glowed red beneath. To cross, one had to walk without pause, showing trust in their own strength. Many Veyrans had failed, consumed by fear. Daniel took a breath and stepped onto the bridge. The heat scorched his skin, and the air burned his lungs, but he did not stop. His boots struck each stone with steady rhythm. The flames licked at his arms, yet he pressed on. His mind returned to the battlefields of Earth, to the long marches through dust and blood. He had endured worse. Step by step, he crossed until at last he reached the other side. The hall erupted in murmurs of surprise. The second test was the circle of blades. Dozens of warriors surrounded him, armed with blunt weapons. Their task was to strike, to test his skill, his patience, and his control. To succeed, he had to fight without killing, to defend himself with honor. The circle closed around him. The first blow came fast, but Daniel blocked it with his arm, turning the strike aside. He moved not with rage but with precision. Every motion was sharp, controlled. He disarmed one, then another, never striking to wound. Sweat ran down his face, and his muscles burned, but he did not falter. At last, the warriors withdrew, nodding with respect. Few had expected him to last so long, fewer still thought he would show restraint. Again, the hall filled with whispers. The final test was the trial of truth. Daniel was brought before the king, the nobles, and the soldiers. He was asked to speak, to answer the question that lay heavy on every heart. Why did he, a human soldier, save the alien princess when the galaxy burned with war? Daniel stood tall. His voice carried clear through the chamber. I saved her because she was not my enemy in that moment. She was a life in need. I have seen enough death. I have buried friends and brothers. I have seen cities fall. I know what war brings. But when I found her, I saw not an alien or a princess. I saw someone who deserved to live. And I could not turn away. The hall grew silent. His words carried no trick, no polished speech. They were simple, raw, and true. Even the hardest of soldiers felt the weight of his honesty. King Valner's eyes narrowed. His fury still burned, but something deeper stirred within him. He searched Daniel's face for lies, for weakness, but found none. What he saw instead was the same fire he had once seen in his own daughter, the fire of honor. Lyra stepped forward, her voice strong. You have seen him, father. You have seen his courage, his restraint, his truth. He has passed your trial. Will you deny what your own eyes tell you? The nobles murmured. The soldiers shifted uneasily. Many had been moved by the trial, though fear of the king kept them silent. Valner rose from his throne. His presence filled the hall, his voice echoing like thunder. The human has endured our fire. He has faced our warriors. He has spoken truth. By the laws of Vera, he has passed the trial of honor. The hall erupted in shock. Some cheered, others argued, but none could deny the words of their king. Yet Valner was not finished. His eyes locked on Daniel, cold and sharp. You have proven yourself before my people. But do not mistake this for acceptance. You are still human. Your kind is still at war with mine. You may walk beside my daughter, but you walk under my watch. If you betray her, if you betray this kingdom, your life will end. Daniel bowed his head slightly. I understand. Lyra exhaled, her heart racing with relief. Against all odds, Daniel had stood before her people and earned their respect. He had not just survived. He had shown them something they had never expected to see in a human honor. When they left the hall together, whispers followed them. Some voices spoke with hope, others with doubt, but all knew that something had changed. A seed had been planted in the heart of Vera. For the first time, the people had seen a human not as monster or foe, but as warrior of honor. And for the first time, King Valner's fury had been challenged by truth. But the war outside still raged. The humans and Varans continued to clash across the stars. The trial had not ended the conflict. It had only opened a door. As Daniel and Lyra walked through the halls, their bond stronger than ever, they both knew the path ahead would not be easy. The king's acceptance was fragile. The nobles whispered of betrayal. The soldiers still looked at Daniel with suspicion. Yet in the shadows of doubt, a flame of hope burned. And sometimes, hope was stronger than any weapon. The halls of Vera still echoed with the memory of the trial of honor. Though the trial had ended, its impact continued to ripple through the kingdom. Daniel had survived, had shown courage and truth, and had gained the respect of many. Yet peace was still fragile, and war lingered like a shadow over every corner of the galaxy. Princess Lyra knew this well. She walked beside Daniel through the palace gardens, her thoughts heavy. The morning sun cast golden light on the flowers, and the air smelled of fresh leaves. But beauty could not erase the danger outside their walls. "Do you think they will ever trust you fully?" she asked softly. Daniel glanced at her. His face carried calm strength, though he knew the answer was not simple. "Trust is not built in a single day. I earned a little in the trial, but it will take more. What matters is that I keep standing by you. In time, they will see." Lyra smiled faintly. She admired his steady spirit. Few could stand before her father and speak so boldly, fewer still could endure the trial without breaking. Yet Daniel had done both. His presence gave her hope that maybe, just maybe, things could change. But King Valnor was not so easily swayed. In the throne room, he sat with his advisors. Some nobles pressed him to exile the human, warning of hidden betrayal. Others whispered that the princess's bond with Daniel might be useful, a chance to study their enemies' ways. Valnor listened, his eyes hard as stone. At last, he raised his hand for silence. "He has proven his honor, but I will not blind myself. If he wishes to remain beside my daughter, he must prove his worth beyond trials of stone and blade. He must stand in the fire of war." The advisors looked uneasy. One asked, "You mean to place him in battle, my king?" Valnor's gaze sharpened. "Yes. The war grows closer. Our enemies prepare to strike the border worlds. If this human claims honor, let him fight for it. Let him bleed for it. Only then will we see his truth." Word of this decision spread quickly. Many feared Daniel would be sent to his death. Yet when he heard the command, he did not flinch. He nodded simply and said, "If this is the path, I will walk it." Lyra's heart clenched with worry. She wanted to protest, to beg her father to reconsider, but Daniel stopped her gently. "This is not just about me or you. If I fight for your people, they will see that I stand with them. It is the only way forward." The days that followed were filled with preparation. Daniel trained with Veyran soldiers, learning their ways of combat. He studied their weapons, their armor, and their tactics. The soldiers watched him closely, some with doubt, others with quiet respect. To their surprise, Daniel did not mock their methods or boast of his own. He listened, he learned, and he trained harder than any of them. When the day of battle arrived, the sky above the border world burned with fire. Human fleets clashed with Veyran ships in the darkness of space, while on the ground, soldiers fought for every inch of land. It was chaos, a storm of destruction. Daniel fought side by side with Lyra and her soldiers. His rifle cracked through the air, his blade flashed against enemy steel. He moved with calm focus, protecting those beside him. When a Veyran soldier fell, he dragged them to safety. When the enemy pressed hard, he stood firm. At one moment, the enemy broke through their lines. Dozens of human troops surged forward, their weapons blazing. Panic spread among the Veyran soldiers. Yet Daniel charged ahead, his voice strong. "Hold the line. With me." His courage sparked fire in their hearts. The Veyrans rallied around him, and together they drove back the attackers. For the first time, they did not see him as outsider. They saw him as brother in arms. Lyra fought at his side, her blade flashing with skill. She felt pride with every step, not just for herself but for Daniel. He was no longer just the human who saved her. He was the warrior who fought for her people, who proved that unity was possible even in the darkest of times. The battle raged for hours, but in the end, the Vayrons held their ground. The enemy retreated, their forces broken. Cheers rose across the battlefield, though many were too tired to lift their voices. Daniel stood among them, covered in dust and sweat, but still alive. When they returned to Veyra, the people greeted them with awe. Stories spread quickly. Soldiers spoke of the human who had fought like one of their own, who had saved lives and inspired courage. For the first time, Daniel was no longer just tolerated. He was respected. In the throne hall, King Valner faced him again. This time, his eyes were not filled with rage but with something heavier, reluctant respect. "You have fought for my people," the king said slowly. "You have shown honor not only in trial but in war. I cannot deny what you have proven. You stand now not as stranger but as warrior of Veyra." The hall erupted in cheers. Lyra's heart swelled with relief and joy. Daniel bowed his head, but his voice carried steady. "I did not fight for titles or honor. I fought because it was right. I fought for those who stood beside me. That is all." Valner studied him long, then gave a single nod. "Perhaps that is the truest honor of all." The kingdom of Veyra would not forget that day. For generations, they would tell the story of the human who walked their trials, who fought their battles, who stood beside their princess. War still burned across the galaxy, but something had changed. A seed of unity had been planted. Lyra and Daniel stood together, no longer bound only by survival, but by a shared vision of what could be. As the sun set over Veyra, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Lyra looked at Daniel with quiet hope. "This is only the beginning," she said. Daniel nodded, his gaze on the horizon. "Then let's see it through. Together."